the governor's executive order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. I didn't leave myself on mute, did I? No. Okay, good. All right. Let's see here. Members of the public wishing to make a comment, please raise your hand on the application or on your phone by dialing *9 during the public comment periods. You will then be unmuted for your public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Once comments have been heard, the chair will close public comment. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Thank you. All right. So getting right down to it, my name is Jason Turner. I am currently the Vice Mayor for Cloverdale this year, and I'm happy to be here with the Fire Board and members of the Fire Department for Cloverdale. Looks like we have a few folks joining us from the public. Bob, Bess, welcome. Looks like a username Leland or possibly, and Sue, thanks for being here with us. All right, so can you scroll down just a hair there, Irene, please? All right, looks like communications, we received a letter of support for a permanent bridge on Russian River at Asti. I believe that was the result of our previous council meeting, and an item on there. Any further details we wish to add, staff, on this one? You're muted, David.
Chair and Vice Mayor, if I can, just to real quick to address the letter of support. This was a letter that the City Council unanimously approved to send to Supervisor Gore. One of the reasons it was shared with the Joint City Fire Subcommittee, one was just to obviously express the council support for a permanent solution to the access issue from Asti Road to an important part of our community, but also because we believe that a permanent bridge would support effective, as stated in the letter, effective egress for residents in case of fire or other emergencies. So just thought it was relevant to bring forward to the Joint City Fire Subcommittee because of its indication that we're trying to support emergency response to an important community area outside Cloverdale.
Excellent. And with that, I'd like to welcome our members of the Fire Board. It looks like Carol and Chief Jenkins is also on the line. If you guys would like, you may have the opportunity here to kind of introduce yourselves, and any comments you have on this particular item, please feel free.
I'm also acting as Vice Chair today because Marianne is in a meeting, and this is Councilmember Cruz.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was definitely going to make sure I introduced you as well, but thank you, Marta. I appreciate that.
Well, this is Carol Giovanato. I really welcome being a part of this subcommittee. I am a local resident. I've actually been on the Fire Board for about 20 years, actually. Enjoy the position and am a lifelong resident of Cloverdale. So very active and interested in Cloverdale. And so I look forward to working with all of you.
Awesome, thank you. Chief Jenkins, may we tempt you?
Yeah, I'm off mute now. Yeah, Chief Jenkins, Cloverdale Fire District. Been in Cloverdale since late 90s. Been involved with the Fire District since 1998. And current Fire Chief and the Fire Chief for approximately 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. And as Marta mentioned, she is here as our Vice Chair this evening, filling in for Marianne. We're definitely happy to have her. And we had some recent kind of input from the community that I think during public comment might be a good time to bring up, Marta. So if you want to kind of take point on that. And with that, I will segue into public comment. Members of the public, this is the opportunity where you can either raise your hand using the app, or I believe if I go back to my instructions, it is star 9 if you're on the phone, and you can speak about items that are not on the agenda at this time, and we will be happy to hear them. So with that, Irene, have you noticed anyone raising their hand? If not, we'll allow Marta to share what we learned today.
Irene, are the people with the goats online?
I do have Leland on the line, so let me.
Okay. He's the one who wants to speak to the committee.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Hopefully he can hear us and we can hear him now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, hi. Would like to introduce myself. I was born and raised here in Sonoma County. I'm a 5th generation rancher. I grew up in Sturts Point out on the coast. And I've been around fire hazard reduction and fuel management my entire life, from grazing to mastication, thinning, and logging. I've studied at Santa Rosa Junior College under natural resource management and animal science. And I'm working on a couple thousand hours of continuing education in land planning. I started my business in 2004 with Grazing the Sea Ranch Association, and I've been there for over 16 years. And I currently have a herd there just on that property with 320 animals in that never leaves. It stays year-round. It's a year-round grazing project. And for you guys that don't know what the Sea Ranch is, it's about 1,800 homes laid out over 3,000 acres. So we're right in people's front yards every day, grazing the common lands. I have 3 herds. Each of them, they have around 300 to 350 animals in them. I have around 1,000 head of sheep, mostly sheep. And I graze homeowners associations, private property, state and county parks, vineyards, and tribal property. This year I'll be grazing where this came about, the Cloverdale River Park, just on a small kind of pilot project with the county. I just got done grazing Walla Point Park for them, for the county out in Walla. And the goals range from fire hazard reduction, field management, butterfly habitat restoration, native flower and plant restoration, and weed abatement. We also do like mechanical mowing, mastication, and land clearing as well without the animals. As a little background on myself, I'm married with 3 young children and another one on the way, and we purchased a piece of property up on Cherry Creek to be close to the school for our kids and to use it as a landing pad to operate my business out of. We do a lot of large scale land planning is what I have a lot of my training in. And my goal here in Cloverdale would be to graze around the subdivisions and put together a community grazing plan. It's better and more effective and more efficient to link neighbors' property together and look at a landscape as a whole instead of small individual pieces. And we have it's a lot more efficient and cost effective. And I think as far as a fire hazard reduction standpoint, you have a better effect focusing on the whole community instead of just one individual property. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland. That's really thought-provoking and intriguing. And I wonder if Kevin, from a community or a development type standpoint, to look at some of those concepts, and then to maybe even think to Hector on where he might see any applications that could occur today, and just allow for a really broad topic to be more digested with staff and Leland. What do you guys think about something like that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I will get with Hector and find out more about the program and bring some information back. And it sounds pretty exciting. Be kind of cool to see all those goats out there.
Yeah. And then Martha, on the Facebook post, there was talk of the cemetery. Do you know a little bit more about that? I only got real high level on that. Is there any other details?
Well, other than, Public Works Director is the person in charge of the cemetery. And we need to discuss with the city manager any ramifications in terms of safety, liability, et cetera, et cetera. before we can engage into any kind of work with the city. We also need to find out if there's a cost involved and so on. So it's something to be brought back.
Absolutely. And then I'm curious from the our fire board partners what your initial thoughts are, if you have any experience, just real high level, because we can't get into this, but just it's a real thought-provoking topic.
But Vice Mayor?
Yeah.
This is just real quick. You know, the first item under discussion is update on vegetation management activities. And just a thought for your consideration would be if we move to that item, you know, I think everything that we're discussing in this context kind of fits broadly within that agenda topic. So it's certainly up to you as the chair, if you want to just, we could maybe jump to item 5A and kind of bring it under that heading, and then we could have, I think it gives us enough opportunity to comply with the Brown Act and be able to speak to this as a larger issue. But it's up to the chair.
No, I love it. Let's go ahead and do that, and that way we meet all the provisions there. However, if there was a presentation or anything like that that's prepared, and Leland, if you're able to stay on the line with us, just in case any questions come up, I'd like to see us touch on this a little further and just see what people's initial thoughts are. Is there, again, I ask because I don't want to move too fast from our fire board partners, any initial comments they want to make on this before we allow for a presentation or anything of that nature?
Yeah, this is Chief Jenkins. I'm familiar with programs like that. They are very effective. I think Cloverdale offers a good opportunity for a few areas of the community that would benefit. The area of Clovercrest that we've worked goats in before, and the large portion of the areas that butt up to the structures on the west side of town that touch the back of multiple properties in different neighborhoods. That's usually really hard to target and really challenged to be effective in single increment weed abatement program that's outside of the city limits. But I think that it would be some promising to see what that could bring forth in the future with goats on that area.
Okay. So I realize I might have faux pod here just a little bit. Irene, before I get into 5A, you can tell I haven't chaired a meeting in some time. Do you mind seeing if anybody had their hand raised or offered any level of public comment while we were on that subject?
You are good to go.
Thank you. So with that, for moving on to 5A, I mean, I can tell you my initial thoughts on when I had update on vegetation management in mind, but is there anything presentation-wise, David, that you may have that you wanted to kind of tee this off with before we get into open-ended discussion? And I asked the same question of our fire partners as well.
Absolutely, Vice Chair. Thank you for and Vice Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. One of the things that we've looked at from staff, particularly in relationship to vegetation management and the large landscape areas that the city manages, is to look at the idea of developing a fire management plan for the city and the greater surrounding area, in collaboration with the fire district and even possibly the county. Obviously, we as a city, we have some large landscape areas, particularly the cemetery being one of them, the river trail being one, and our airport area and surrounding environs. And last but not least, the Porterfield Creek open space. And we've had discussions with the open space district about their recommendation to develop, a fire management plan for that particular, open space preserve, which, it's 250 acres, that could also possibly serve as a model for, the other larger landscapes on the, the western facing side of Cloverdale. Obviously, large landholders get kind of a mixed, Doug fir, oak woodland environment, which if isn't managed properly could potentially, develop into a fire hazard. And a lot of it is really about encouraging, since it's privately owned, and that, with the exception of the open space, developing a plan that could be a model for our community members to utilize or provide best practices, which could incorporate what the speaker mentioned earlier, use of goats to help manage vegetation, but to do it in a way that's also beneficial for the environment could be something that could be tremendously valuable, especially because we've been approached by various landowners on the west facing side who are interested in annexation and putting their property into preserves. And so it starts to become, you start thinking about how those landscapes can be managed in a way that's good for the environment, but also good for putting into place good fire management practices, and to do that in collaboration with the county and the fire district seems like it's just a good opportunity to help address that issue by some good regional planning.
Awesome. Thank you,
So
David.
that's in the comment, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
And I noticed in between that it looks as though Nancy was able to join us. Is that who I see there? Is that Nancy? Might be on mute. Okay. All right. Well, any comments on from the fire board on the concept of having a joint effort approach, or kind of a, as David described, a regional approach to vegetation management this year?
No, I think that's fine. I could also give a brief update of kind of what's currently happening this year.
Please.
As far as weed abate in the city, we've completed our first rounds of inspections. Letters have been sent for all properties that are not in compliance. That second inspection, I think, happens next week. So that's being pretty effective right now. We usually get really good compliance with that. And then we will deal with complaints or properties that pop up throughout the fire season on a case-by-case basis, and send them letters for compliance. This year, we're also inspecting parcels larger than 5 acres outside of the city limits, but it's also in the SRA area. So that would be areas that are like kind of in the flats outside of the city limits before you get into the rural hilly area. So we're doing that this year, and then we'll continue partnering with CAL FIRE on some of the inspections in the target hazard areas further outside of the city. The compliance rate for that, like I said, has been really nearly 100%. I think we've only tried to abate a few properties over the years. So that is going pretty effective right now. Our troops are in the midst of doing the inspections now. So end of report for current weed abatement.
Awesome, thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding the updates that have been provided so far? Staff or Marta or any other fire board members?
Not at this time.
All right, thank
Not
you.
at this time.
Irene, is anybody from the public? I'd like to open it up if anybody'd like to raise their hand or offer a question or comment.
I have Mr. Bob.
Please, Bob.
Let's see. Unmute. Bob, are you able to unmute yours? There we go.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize for that. Yeah, in reading the agenda for today, I did see the vegetation management section, and it brought to mind, I live on Ranch House Drive, and directly across from me is open space that historically has been handled by the con crew. And unfortunately, I realized that the con crew is unavailable to us this year. So I was hoping that that would be addressed somehow. And I was happy to hear that Mr. Leland has an option for that. So I'm very interested in maybe possibly having that team work in our area here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. I'm trying to think. I didn't hear any real actionable items out that. Understanding it was just an update, so I think we've covered what we can on that one.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Chair. Leland did have an additional comment.
Oh, excellent. Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and you guys have that, you've identified the properties that, are potential for management, and to be able to take those and just kind of quantify it into the amount of acres that there are on the properties, kind of how far apart they are, and establishing, grazable acres or ground is like a huge start for the whole process of the thing. And so if we can just get that information, and then you can start building a plan off of that, how much it's going to cost per unit or section, how much do we need to graze the entire 250 acres, or do we need to do 50 acres? And so just kind of take those, you guys have already kind of roughed this out, but from my standpoint, to be able to look at it, to apply it on the ground, or for any other grazing operator to look at it on the ground, we just want to take those, identify it, put it together in some type of, 5-page map that it shows how big the acreages are, and then ingress and egress, how we're going to get in and out is always an issue with truck and trailers. And so that's just a big start, and you guys kind of sound like you already have it a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you.
May I ask a question, please?
Please.
Leland, could you give us a rough estimate, let's say per acre? How does that work?
It really depends on the size of the project. I mean, in Sea Ranch, in a year-round situation, and it's seasonal too, what time of the season you're grazing, your cost goes up and down on a per acre basis. So the way that we do it there is we do a per head per day, and it's right around, $1 a head, $1.25 a head per day for 300 animals. And you might, in the very height of the grass season, when it's super thick, do 1.5 acres, 2 acres a day. And that's the thickest, densest grass. To lighter vegetation, you might do 3 or 4 acres a day. It just really kind of depends. And you don't eat everything to the ground. You want to eat half and trample half. We want to leave armor on the landscape, to protect it for erosion in the wintertime. So we always want to leave some armor there. When I come and go to smaller properties, it brings the cost up. Another thing that we have with Sea Ranch is they have like a security, and I work with them, so I don't have to have a shepherd living with the herd. And so if there's a problem, they call me and I work with that community. And so that brings down my cost. If I have to have a live-on shepherd on site, it brings up the cost a little bit. But I think we've been there long enough, and they are very into looking at the data for this, and we still run about 10 times more efficient, cost-effective wise than mowing, weed whacking, and limbing. It's a 10-to-1 cost savings for them running the grazing program versus going out there in the field and mowing with tractors. And
one more question is, do you establish a fence around the area that's being?
It's all portable and electric. Everything we do, I truck the animals in. We build an electric. It's mesh netting, and we can build a field in, depending on how big it is, 2 to 4 hours. Unload the animals right into the field, and then we build a field in front of them, move them to the next one, and just keep moving them and take it down behind us. Build one in the front, so everything is portable. When I'm done with the property, there's nothing left behind. You won't know I was there besides the grass is knocked down and there might be a little bit of dung and urine around.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yep.
Cool, thanks. Any other comments or questions at this time?
And from the public.
All right, so to kind of get us back on track here, we do need to approve the minutes, but I will admit I need some guidance on how to move forward. The last meeting occurred before I even joined the council. I mean, nothing on it seemed out of place, but we can,
No. We haven't
approve.
had a meeting. This is the first one in 2 years.
I motion to move the minutes, I guess, is really just where we're at. Anybody oppose? Second? All right. I don't see any objections. Do we need a second? I don't think we do on this one, do we, David?
No.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Moving on. 5B. Update on preparation for the upcoming fire season. It seems similar to A. So, David, anything specific you wanted to make sure we shared on this particular item?
Nothing from the city's perspective. Vice Mayor, Chair, it was just, to provide an opportunity to have an interactive discussion between the city and the fire district, and just in terms of, what preparations are being taken to prepare for the fire season. We obviously saw this weekend that there was already some active fire activity in the county. And, we expect the landscapes are a little bit drier out there. And given the reduced amount of vegetation management activities that we've engaged in at this particular point in time in the year, that we might have an active fire season. But really, the fire district takes the lead on a lot of the preparation activities. And I think this is just opportunity, if there's anything we can do as a city to facilitate, preparation or even education of the community. The city's here to support, obviously, appropriate fire mitigation in advance of the fire season.
Excellent. So I guess with that, I'd like to just kind of turn it over to the fire board for a moment and maybe get an idea of what you guys are anticipating for this year as far as maybe challenges or hurdles, and maybe a high level overview that might narrow in on things that we can focus on as the year progresses.
Yeah, for us, there are a lot of high-level challenges that we're dealing with. Nothing that really pertains to the people out there seeing the service and the delivery, but it's mainly COVID and how we're going to, feed and rest firefighters and give fire line safety briefings and all that. So there's a lot of things that are happening on our end that we're dealing with. But for the most part, every fire season we prepare that they're all going to be the same and the worst. So for us, really nothing has changed operationally. We've added our seasonal firefighters back on. We're back to training regularly, getting ready for fire season with all the firefighters back due to the COVID kind of deal that we dealt with there. So for the most part, we're expecting a fairly, busy, normal fire season. It's really hard to say, whether, the grass is so green and tall, it's going to be bad fire season, or, the winds or the drought. It's always something, right? So no matter what it is, there's a spin as to why it's the worst fire season ever. So we always prepare like it's going to be. So from the fire district standpoint, we're ready, we're upstaffed, and we'll see what it brings us. We will continue with our, inspections, our public outreach stuff on Facebook and Instagram when we have fires that are worth, pumping information out. We do not post, we just don't have the staffing to post on every little fire that we get every time we roll fire trucks out this fire station. We go to, nearly 100 fires a year, and of those, maybe 20 are significant. So for the most part, most of our fires, we're not really reporting out what is going on, because they're handled by the first, unit or two there pretty quickly. So when there's something pertinent or emergent that we need to get out, we'll do that.
Can I ask one more question here? With the fire in Petaluma that occurred or could be getting kind of wrapped up today, I think 95% is what I heard this morning. And, those first reports coming out were obviously quite triggering for people in the community, understandably, who have been enduring fire seasons that have been, kind of escalating. Can you comment on that fire? Is it out of place? Did it make you raise an eyebrow? Or
that's
just
a great.
And that fell into line, so to speak?
Yeah. So for me, it's an early season fire. Grass is ready to burn. It's thick vegetation. A fire like that is going to push as far as the humidities are down low in the daytime, or the winds continue to drive it. When that fire broke out, I thought, okay, this will be a typical fire. It's somewhat windy. It might go a couple 100 acres and they'll catch it in the nighttime, which is exactly what happened. Same thing happened in Solano County. When those fires run into areas of brush and trees, they're not at critical fuel moistures yet. So the chance of that fire being, you know, a 3,000 acre, a 20,000, a 100,000 acre fire are really, really slim. That was not on my radar at all yet. Those things happen, you know, August, September, October. So for us, you know, I thought, you know, firefighters like fires like that, they can go out and they think they'll be home the next day. So, you know, that they thought that they'd catch a fire like that. The challenge with that was it was windier than most days, right? So the spread is pretty quick. If there were no winds on that fire, the first engine would have picked it up in maybe an acre or two. So wind is the primary dominant factor in fire spread and dictates, you know, how fast and where fires travel. So early in the season, not too terribly convinced, but it depends on what the winds are doing.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And with that, I'd like to offer anybody else, staff, any questions on this topic that you might have for the fire board.
Yes, I have a question.
Please, Mark.
Chief Jenkins, do you foresee any burning around here in terms of, you know, the usual safety burning?
We don't have anything scheduled right now as far as fire department training burns in the vegetation. Usually we do every year out past Hamburger Ranch. If it's, and sometimes at the city ponds. We don't have anything scheduled right now. So I don't know if we will be burning anything here. I know that with CAL FIRE's permission, property owners can still get permission to burn. The burn ban is not 100% in effect by CAL FIRE. That'll probably happen here pretty soon. But no one's going to be burning anything right now this time of year without inspection, full authority from CAL FIRE and the fire district approving it.
Okay, thank you.
Irene, has anybody from the public at this time indicated they have a question?
No public comments at this time.
All right, with that, anybody from the public, would you like to ask a question?
No public comments.
Thank you. Any final comments on this topic before we move on? I would like to see, as long as the group agrees, this to be a standing item as we kind of march through the rest of the summer and into the fall. I'd also, well, I'll just leave it at like that for right now. So I'd like to see this be a standing item as long as the group agrees. What do you guys think?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next we'll do planning for the 4th of July activities and fireworks. David, if I can for just 1 second, I'll hand it kind of over to you. At the last council meeting, it was determined that Safe and Sane fireworks would continue this year. And there's also been discussions regarding a show held on the school's baseball field. And so I had asked for this item to be on here just to get a perspective from our fire board regarding what the 4th of July tends to look like for you guys, to give you an update that we will continue with Safe and Sane fireworks this year, should you have not heard that already. And, you know, just kind of anything else you can mention on that topic. And before we get into that, David, is there anything that you wanted to make sure from city staff's perspective we introduced on this topic?
Thank you, Chair Turner. Just a couple of things. I invited Chief Ferguson to attend the meeting. I see that there's a tremendous opportunity for the city and, you know, through our police department as well as the district, collaborate on our plan for the 4th of July activities. Obviously, you know, we look to our, law enforcement officials and our fire safety officials to kind of help provide the guidance that's often needed around that holiday. Obviously, the holiday this year falls on a Saturday, so I would expect folks might find an opportunity to enjoy themselves a little bit more than usual when it falls during the busy work week. But just to make sure that we're working together and collaborating on any response that's necessary, particularly relative to the larger fireworks display. The other item that I wanted to mention was the group that supports the sale of Safe and Sane American Promotional Events, or K&T Fireworks, has submitted a public education plan for activities this year. I put a copy of it in the packet. It's got a fairly good amount of information around the safe, kind of educational information around safe use. They also have included this year a specific component that addresses protocols for dealing with COVID-19. They've got links to brochures, links to videos that often they distribute through the schools. And I thought this might be an opportunity just to have a conversation about how best to get this information out to the community and to the public. And I know the chief is, which maybe Chief, if you could touch on, you've prepared some information to put out via Nixle. Chief, now our police department does utilize Nixle 360, and it's been an effective tool to help communicate events and activities and provide important community updates to our residents. And so just thought this was a good opportunity for us to discuss how we might want to work together to get just good educational materials out to the community.
You want me to chime in now?
If that's okay with you, Vice Chair, or Chair, Vice Mayor.
Oh, am I muted? Oh, no, I'm good. Yeah, go right ahead, please. Carry on.
So I was just going to kind of a takeaway from what David said. I think the fireworks have done a good job of making sure that they're covering a lot of basis on the safety factors, and those will go out to the booths and, from my understanding, to the individuals that are purchasing as well. From the police department planning side, it's very important to get out to the community everything that we can to help make this safe. And I've kind of drafted up something that's going to go out on Nixle well before the event, which is really going to capitalize on the designated places for discharge. That's going to be really important, the hours and times of sales, and things that we can do to get ahead of this to try to make it safe as possible. It really outlines our ordinances too on an educational standpoint. I think it's really important that we educate our community on what our ordinance is regarding fireworks. And it's also going to include what our park rules are for those that want to go into the parks, and rules that we have posted that are going to need to be followed. I think one of the difficult things for us in this planning phase is not knowing what we can expect. David already said it's going to be on a weekend. I anticipate that we're going to get a surge of people from out of the area because we potentially will be having a show as well. So that really kind of complicates things for us from a patrol standpoint, because we are still dealing with an SIP, and we still will have social gathering and mass gatherings potentially. Where that would be, I don't 100% know. I've heard different things about the aerial show and that it's not going to permit people on the premises where the show is going to happen. So I'm not 100% sure what that's going to look like, but we need to be prepared for that. Our staff is going to be nearly full capacity, to include myself and the lieutenant. And we're going to do a very comprehensive briefing at our police department beforehand. And I want to invite Chief Jenkins or one of his members to be present for that if they'd like to be, so they can see what we have in place from a law enforcement standpoint. And also I have links that are going to go out through Nixle on educating and safety. That'll be part of that too, that can help educate, kind of in the same lines as the fireworks organization's doing.
Thank you, Chief Ferguson. Chief Jenkins, can you offer input at this time?
Yeah, Chief, that was spot on. We're in the same lane as a thought process. We will be adding extra fire engines. We patrol all throughout the afternoon, late into the evening. So we're really used to that. So we'll be doing that. We also will staff the fireworks show at the high school. The plan is to have them launch at the baseball field at the high school. It has all the appropriate clearances and distance for that. We're planning on, the Lions Club is planning on that the SIP will still be in place, so they won't be inviting people to come to that field. It'll be cordoned off for a launch kind of only, subject to change if the county reduces, multi-gathering number of people, however that plays out. But the key thing is going to be in the communications and having a communication meeting and strategy to pump out, Nixle, Facebook, the flyer at the sales for Safe and Sane, the posters and bulletins that go up throughout the community. A lot of messaging has got to be coordinated this year more so than ever. So David Kelly and I talked about last week scheduling a meeting possibly this week or next week at the latest and start getting all the stakeholders involved and getting the communications plan ready soon. So end of report.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody from staff or the fire board wish to offer an update or a point of view as on what they've heard so far? All right. At this point in time, I'd like to offer the public a few moments to raise their hand for questions, comments. If staff think of any questions or anything during this time, please feel free. Anything?
Currently, there are no raised hands.
Okay, so I really like that collaboration is I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads on the webcam, which is very important to me. That collaboration is a unified concept with everybody on the call today. I think we can all agree that there will be a spotlight this year on ensuring that safe practices were utilized, and it will be a benchmark for what next year looks like as far as success or failure of a continued safe and sane ordinance. I think a lot of people are watching us on this. And so one of the things I heard that I'm very comforted with is that David and Chief Jenkins will be meeting, it sounds like soon, to kind of get the ball rolling. Chief Ferguson, I heard that you're very open to having a member of the fire department at your briefing that leads up to the holiday. Thank you for being that open-minded and just really allowing all the resources to come along and share their input. And it sounds like from Chief Jenkins as well that there's an openness to participate in that. Did I understand that correctly, Chief?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So I'd really like to hear about how the first kickoff meeting goes. The other thing that started to concern me until you guys talked about these meetings you have as deliverables is that we weren't going to have a scheduled meeting between now and the 4th. But as long as I can kind of get a rundown on how our plans develop and that can be disseminated out to the council for them to answer questions and comments from the community as well as the fire board in case anything goes their way. I want to see transparency on just beast mode with this, if I can be so bold. So with those statements, Marta, anything you want to offer in that regard, or based on what I've said, if anybody in the public wants to raise their hand, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, it's essential that we continue to communicate and that all parts know what everybody else is doing. This first joint meeting will be essential, and normally there's not a very frequent meeting. It's twice a year, but I think it'll be important for Chief Jenkins to continue to work with Ferguson and David for all of us to have all the information as required so we can disseminate to all of our constituents.
Excellent. Thank you. So with that, I will one last time offer any comment, public or otherwise, before we move on to item number D. Letter D, that is.
No hands are raised, Chair.
All right, thank you. So next thing we want to do is, this is a discussion debrief on March 2020 fire tax ballot measure. Unless I'm mistaken, David, I really believe that the intent here was to kind of get an idea of the cause and effect of the ballot measure that did not pass in March and what might be some of the plans moving forward. Was there any other details that city staff was hoping to ascertain from this topic as well?
Chair, Vice Mayor, really no further information that we were seeking. It was really just an opportunity to have a discussion about, why the measure that was on the ballot in March, failed. I think, there was, there was a couple of key reasons in my mind, but the fire district may also have a perspective on it. And maybe, more importantly, I think we all recognize that there's a critical need for additional revenues for all the functions that we provide, and that this may be something that either the district as an independent district or in cooperation with the county and other fire districts may want to revisit and bring back, and what opportunities there are to have a conversation to address kind of what I saw as something missing from the original ballot measure was kind of a governance structure that would help support a tax measure of that magnitude. And so I think Chair, that's what we talked about was, was there just to have a conversation with the district, whether there was, in light of the ballot measure failing, was there interest in the district, pursuing, maybe another parcel tax or is there going to be some other proposal to increase revenue for the district, and then likewise, kind of what the city's going to be looking at in terms of, bringing back a utility user tax, not because it relates to fire per se, just because it's the voters of Cloverdale who ultimately will be deciding on it, and they look at it in a larger context of all the taxes and all the measures that they vote on. So
yeah, because thank you, David, and you are absolutely right, because I do recall us having a conversation about things like tax fatigue. Are our voters becoming fatigued over the taxes, and how can we collaborate to ensure that we don't cause any adverse effects to one another's efforts to raise the funds that we need. So, from the fire board, I'm curious, was it a letdown that it didn't pass? Was it something that maybe was anticipated and can be overcome? Just anything you feel like sharing on that topic right now.
Yeah, I'll say a few things of it. The tax had a lot of problems with it. The disbursement throughout the many districts in the county had big hurdles and challenges to try to overcome countywide. It being a forever tax was difficult. And, it also didn't allow Cloverdale to have a voice and was forcing consolidation. And that may not be in Cloverdale's best interest long term. And so if you didn't consolidate, then that money would be stripped from your area and it would be sent somewhere else, which would then put you at a huge disadvantage and force you to consolidate. So in Cloverdale being at the end of the pipeline where we only get our help from the south, we have to be able to have a lot of local control and make quick decisions that can affect fire protection at the local level. So consolidation may or may not be in our best interest long term. That's something that the elected officials of Cloverdale need to determine what is right and what works best. So for that tax not failing, in some aspects it's good for Cloverdale, but we will need additional revenue in the future. So it doesn't, there will be an impact. We are in a partnership joint powers agreement with Guysville Fire District, so we're working on that. And we're in the process of doing a sphere of influence study to annex the geysers area, which is an area that we serve, but all of 100% of the fire tax revenue for the geysers all goes south of northern Sonoma County. So we're trying to get some of that revenue. If we had that revenue, we wouldn't even need to go out to the voters and tell them they need to pay for a half-cent sales tax. And when they told the voters they needed to go for a half-cent sales tax, most fire districts in the county went to their voters, brought in millions of dollars in increased assessments, and then still went to the voters and told them they needed half-cent sales tax. So in my opinion, it was not being truthful to the public, and it was a grab that was excessive. End of report.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time from staff, fire board members, anything at this time?
Yes, Chief Jenkins, you mentioned JPA with Geyserville. What would that entail?
So what that entails is basically a seamless operational deployment as far as resources, same standards, policies, SOPs, sharing of staff. We'll be known as Northern Sonoma County Fire. You'll still have a Cloverdale fire station, a Geyserville fire station. So the public will see a little bit of change with like branding and imaging, but the service will be relatively the same because we've been functionally consolidated for a couple years now, and we'll continue to take more steps and more steps to make that more formal as we go through it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, that's a lot. I'm hopeful the geysers annexation works out. It sounds like that's a serious revenue source that can kind of at least give you a handful of years to think about what the next steps are and should be.
It is. It's a huge deal for us. The process of trying to get that revenue is probably almost 10 years. The county is very, very reluctant to let that money go. They use it to help fund their volunteer firefighting companies that the county has, even though there are none of those in the North County. They use all the revenue here. We don't see it. It all goes south. So it's very political. It's a long process, and the sphere is one of the areas that show that we support that. We're the only agencies that go to the calls there. We've been doing it for decades, but it is very political. And we're hoping to be successful because, yeah, it will definitely give us an increased cushion and help add staffing and better equipment.
Yeah, and if I could just weigh in on that.
Please.
Our focus is and I mean, Jason spoke to it very eloquently. So, my only words are that as Jason said, we've been focused on this for a number of years, and with the geysers annexation and working on this very diligently, working on the JPA with Geyserville, and really with a focus on local control and North County control, and looking at what is best, how we best serve the North County area. And I think that, that in a nutshell is really what was missing in the tax ballot measure, is really looking at that. And so, that really is our focus, is how we serve, the area and our constituents. So we will continue to look at that and really what's best for, the taxpayers up here. So really working and looking at that.
Excellent. Thank you. So with those comments, any questions from staff, or Irene, have we seen any hands go up possibly while staff may have questions?
No hands have gone up.
Okay. Well, that is, it sounds like we're going to want to kind of keep, maybe not necessarily under this title, but maybe, God, I don't even know how to word it, but, just something to keep us in a partnership on this, to where as we see maybe the writing on the wall for something we may want to put on the ballot, do we have a relationship to where we can engage you and make sure we're not creating, what could be perceived as, tax fatigue on the ballot and stuff. That's what I see as an opportunity to move forward. Marta, what do you think as far as
well, isn't that an initiative by the county?
Well, I guess more what I was thinking of is if circumstances alluded to maybe a parcel tax in the area, or things of that nature, and where it might align with us trying to maybe continue the user utility and trying to maybe not have those happen at the same time. I guess it's just really an effort to be collaborative, but really no one of us has the authority to tell the other not to do it. It's just you know, what can we do to encourage a partnership and a relationship in that space is kind of where my head's at.
Yeah, this is Jason again. I think you're right on point with that. And Martha's right, is absolutely correct as well. This was a county-led initiative, but with it failing, it's hard to say if they're going to try to regroup and do something else. I know Santa Rosa City is saying that was our one shot. We're most likely out, and they'll go their own route. If we are unsuccessful with the Geysers annexation and bringing in that additional revenue, it would be something for Cloverdale Fire District to consider is increasing our assessment. It's $88 per parcel. It's one of the lowest in the county, and it's been in place since the inception of the district. So, but as we kind of cross some of those hurdles and determine what that looks like, I think it would be really important to make sure that the city and the fire district kind of communicating that plan, what that looks like, and we don't have competing measures up or similar. You know, things. If you went out for a public safety tax that only went towards law enforcement, I think that we should explore looking at something that addresses maybe law enforcement, youth activities after school, fire protection, lump 3 or 4 things into one package and sell it to the whole community that benefits a broad array. That should be something that gets explored.
Awesome.
One other thing I will need to add is just for the time sensitive of this meeting, the district folks got to get off in just a couple minutes for our regular scheduled board meeting.
Okay, understood. Irene, do you have a good concept of how to create a standing title for kind of what we talked about in that area there?
I would suggest something like collaborative communication regarding tax measures.
Cool, works for me.
Because we have an urgency in our renewing our tax measure here at this point, and perhaps the fire safety will be down the road.
And then I do want to make sure that we get on to E just a little bit before the board members need to jump off. Honestly, I'm just going to come right out and say it. I'd like to see us meet more than once every 6 months at this time. I really think, especially with what we talked about today, the standing items moving into the fall, the concept of tax measures. Is there a frequency a little bit more, but not a burden on everybody? We all have a lot of competing priorities. Could quarterly work? Bi-monthly? What are we kind of thinking on that as far as availability goes? And it could very well be
quarterly.
Yep.
Was the original plan.
Okay.
And there were quarters that popped up where no one had any agenda items, and when those are the case, then we would cancel. But if we more stick to quarterly, and if people throw things out there for discussion, and now it seems like we're getting busier, I think quarterly would be a good track to be back on.
How's that sound for Cloverdale City staff? Is that a doable frequency for this type meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay. Fire board, does that sound agreeable? Quarterly, we can move it. The time can be readdressed since we're going to have to pass a resolution to alter the frequency anyway. So this might be the time to discuss the time in which we start. Isn't that right, David?
That is correct. We can. I think the next regularly scheduled meeting is October 12th, 2020. But if we wanted to hold a meeting before then, we can call it a special meeting. But otherwise, if we want to establish a completely new schedule, date, and time, then we'll need to bring it back to council for an updated resolution.
Okay. Marta, anything before we kind of let the board get off here? Anything from the public real quick on the frequency before we allow the fire board to attend their meeting?
None at this time.
All right, so I really like quarterly. Let's go ahead and get a special meeting going. We'll get an email going out about the time and the date. Thank you guys so much for being with us this evening, and totally understand you have a meeting that you need to finish. I'm not 100% sure. Do I just kind of move to adjournment since we can't quite discuss future agenda items? A little guidance here would be much appreciated.
Well, if we called a special meeting, we could add that, the meeting schedule as an item on a future, on a special meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then really establish a meeting schedule at that point.
That works for me. As far as this meeting goes, understanding that you guys need to kind of hop off, what's the best way to kind of conclude today, David?
Chair, I think you can just say information only memos, none. If there's any, if there's any other future agenda items, there's no pending items.
Okay, so we can just rip through it here real quick. Anybody have any future agenda items before we part ways here real quick? And otherwise, we'll get an email for the agenda as Irene makes it moving forward.
I would like to consider establishing some sort of children youth activities with the fire district. I don't know what they have, if that could be shared with us, so that just like the police has some activities for youth and children, I would like to know what the fire district has too.
Excellent.
We do just school tours, the fire prevention month, station visits, open houses, things like that. And then as far as like dedicated long-term activities, we have an Explorer post that we operate.
We'll probably have to revisit that given COVID conditions for a while. So I just wonder if maybe that's something that has to be revisited in terms of how it would be handled if the restrictions continue until we have a vaccine or kids go back to school.
Is it kind of like almost getting an update, Marta? Update on maybe the Explorer program and outreach?
Well, if there, an update, and if there's possibility of doing other activities given the new conditions that we're living under, health-wise.
Is that a topic of interest for the group to discuss?
I mean, they already have a program. I'm just saying, is it going to be revised if these conditions continue?
Okay.
Chief Jenkins?
Not hearing any objections.
I mean,
so yeah.
our Explorer program is up and running now, where we just have modified trainings and limit the numbers and do some things differently in-house that they're trained on. As far as the other things, that really is mainly school dependent. And then it'll be, so once schools reopen, we'll get back into schools and do those types of things. And then we will not have any station large gathering visits until the health department says we can do so. So that's probably another few weeks to a month out.
Okay.
But we're not doing any programs or activities in the meantime because of that condition.
Okay, please make sure that you keep us in the loop to help you promote the programs. We want to make sure that everybody gets access to know what's going on. Thank you.
Any other items or anything that staff or otherwise may wish to discuss at a future meeting? Not seeing anyone waving at me. Okay. Pending items from staff, seeing none. Good to the order. I'm thrilled we got to get together here and just really kind of get this communication going again. Doubly excited to kind of increase our frequency. So thanks again to this whole group for putting today together. There we go. And any other good to the order before I adjourn? Seeing no one waving at me. Okay, you guys, thanks again. Have a wonderful evening. And yes.
Stay healthy.
Yes, be healthy. All right, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.